Well, thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm sorry if I'm disappointed because I know I wasn't your first choice and your second. But not to worry, I think you were expecting the mayor. I'm not the mayor, I'm the borough. And I can tell you this, I shall never ever be a mayor. Ever. Right, well, where do I start? I suppose I need to start by just giving you a little bit of my background. I have what I would call a happy childhood, a normal childhood, with one exception. I absolutely loathed and detested school. I hated it. From the minute I went to the second I left, I hated it. Which is rather unfortunate, though, because it meant that I could never go on. Probably I wasn't clever enough, but I could never go on to higher education because it was just enough. No way. So I left school at 16, as soon as I possibly could have was 16. And I lived in Sheffield at the time and went and became a tradesman at James Neal. I'm sure a lot of you know Elliot Lucas, Warren Wright, Eclipse. We were handsome manufacturing companies. And I went there and absolutely loved it. I just thought this was wonderful. You know, when anybody ever came into my home, I would rifle through their toolbox to see, and I would wax lyrical about hammers to my grandmother, and she was so upset. I was really so entranced with the hand tools. I was a secretary, just called secretaries in these days, peers or secretary. And I became the secretary to the sales and marketing directors and sort of on a part-time basis to the management director. Now, when I first went there, it was what I call very, very old school. Everybody knew what a student, and it was very polite. And then one day, we were getting a new managing director. And this chap stormed into the room. The door went flying, and there was this big man without a jacket, without a jacket, red braces, and excuse my language, but and he went, "What the is going on in here?" I was more worried about the braces, to be honest, but this was a bit of an eye-opener. Because it was all terribly nice before, and now it wasn't. It was, you know. And you either loved this man or you loathed him. There was no in between. He was exactly the same. But fortunately, I loved him. I thought he was marvelous, and he has certainly influenced me, my work, ethos, everything about it. He did it, and I take my hat off to him. So that's where I started in the hand tool industry, and I stayed there for quite some considerable time before coming down to the Midlands for various reasons, which I won't bother with. And I have had 3 marriages now. But when I came down, I was shortly to marry my second husband, and then it all started going pear-shaped again. And I realized that I needed to go and get a proper job instead of being on the show and exhibition circuit, which I then was doing. So I saw this advertisement in the Herald saying Mayor's Secretary. And I thought, oh, Mayor's Secretary. Perhaps I could do that. I was a good secretary when I was a secretary. I'm sure I might be able to do that. And it sounds like quite interesting. Now, I was still living with my ex-husband at that time, and we had this terrible row. And in those days, people won't believe this and know me very well, but in those days, I didn't drink. And there was this terrible row. So I grabbed a bottle of wine, stormed upstairs and drank it, you know, practically the whole bottle of wine. So the next day, I felt like, I mean, seriously, like death. And I had to go to this interview. What the hell? Anyway, I went to this. I was obviously so laid back about the whole thing. I didn't get myself in the stage or anything. I didn't even sell myself. Just, oh, for God's sake, how long is this going to take? I need to go and die in the corner of a room. Fortunately, I must have made a good impression because 2 days later they phoned and offered me the job, and it was purely temporary, covering somebody's maternity leave. So that's how I got my foot into the door of a local authority. I had never worked in local authorities before. I knew nothing about them whatsoever. And I was only there to be the mayor's secretary, and I can do that, and I did. And it was an interesting ride because the person I was covering for maternity with, there had been quite a number of babies. And so there was quite a considerable time off when there wasn't a mayor's secretary. And I'd send out invitations for whatever we were doing. And I was sitting there thinking, people are so rude. People are so damn rude. They never even bother to reply. Well, 90% of the people that we wrote to were dead. Nobody had updated the so little by little, even in that short time, I was able to put systems in place and introduced a form so that when we wanted to book the mayor, it was sort of streamlined. And unfortunately, at the time, Vince Seaman, late Vince Seaman, he was the mayor. And he was a businessman, and we got on tremendously well. And he just left it to me, really. He just left it to me. You answer, you write. And that's what I thought you did when you were the mayor's secretary. You wrote the mayor's speech. I mean, they obviously would have to make it themselves, make it theirs, but you did that, you wrote it. And I was quite surprised when I found out actually you didn't do that. And this was great, because all they had to do was turn up. I think that changed somewhat, but when I was there, I used to think that this was part of the job, that you did your research, you wrote the speech, you did the thank you letter, you made the mayor's life as simple and happy as possible. And I hope actually that was what I did when I became town clerk, because I don't like the word no, and I don't like people who go, yeah, there's always this intake of breath, and you know that it's going to be a problem. And I hope, and I've got Jenny and Ian here, I hope that in my tenure I did try and make everybody's life as simple and as happy as possible. Because we were very much a family. I considered them, a lot of them were friends, but we never crossed over on that professional. At the end of the day, we could go and have a drink together, we could go to dinner together, but I was still the town clerk, and if something went wrong the next day, then I would down like that. So that was the start. And I'm trying to think now of the things that I will never forget. And the first thing, I'd only been in post, I should think, about 9 months, if that. And the council took the decision to put a telecommunications mast, not mast, that's another story, birthday celebration, but I won't go there for a moment, on top of the chapel roof in the cemetery. And I thought that was a jolly good idea, personally, because the people who were going to be protected were dead. So that's where we needed to put it. We weren't going to put it on the edge of people's homes, which was one of the planning application things that was turned down. And this is when I first found out how horrible people are. I mean, really, really horrid. And people were screaming at me down the phone. Well, it wasn't my decision. It was terrible. I had to do my research. I had to make sure that we were legally, we could, that it wasn't, didn't have a, what do you have with these Church of England people? A faculty. Didn't have a faculty on it. We could literally, legally put it on top of it. And so we did. But this was the worst time of my life for a long time. People were horrible. People were camping outside the town hall when I came to work. I felt like, I was crossing a picket line. There were absolutely really only two protagonists, but they were not nice. And I was thinking, oh my God, is this what being a town clerk's really like? Because not only was I having all this hassle, I was also actually having to learn my job because I've never worked in local government. I had to study for the exam in council administration as well. But the saving grace, and I'm sure you've all been here, is when you are in love, when you have fallen in love, you can move mountains. You're invincible and you can do anything. Unfortunately, at that time, I was desperately in love with my first husband. I'm still am. So actually, he managed to get me through, because I'm not exaggerating. It was horrendous. Now, those were the days when we didn't really have social media or anything like that. It was the telephone, or it was an email, but not social media. And I know that my saving grace has been the fact that I don't use social media, and never have, and never will. Because people don't really believe this, but I am incredibly insular, terribly, terribly shy, and I do not have a thick skin. So if I had been looking at what people say, or I wouldn't have lasted 9 months, 19 years. And I just find it abhorrent where we are now with the world and with social media. I mean, I get it. Of course I get it. We have it at work. Obviously we had it at work. But people seem to be able to hide behind this keyboard and say what they like. No, face to face, they would never ever do that. And I just said, right, that's enough. I won't do it, and I haven't done it. And I think that's another thing that has actually kept me sane and has got me through it. So, in terms of the town council, well, we are a parish council. That's all we are. But I've always thought that we're a parish council that punches above its weight. We're very, very traditional. You've probably seen us banging a lot of drums and walking and wearing robes, and we do at town council. We literally wear robes, and I wear a wig, and it's all very formal. But I always see the town council as just sort of ratifying what has gone on in the 2 months before the town council meeting for all the other committees, which are not as good, where you still have standing orders, and we're still very strict about adhering to those standing orders, or I certainly was as a clerk, because they are actually what kept us on the straight and narrow. And the minute you deviate, or the minute you go, it doesn't matter, that's when the rot sets in, I think, and things can just suddenly start to slide. So as a council, we have 9 wards and 2 members per ward. And I think that the boundary change, there's a boundary review. Fortunately, I've gone, so I don't have to worry about that one. But that's how we operate. And when I first came, I sort of clocked everything, because there weren't the staff there to, well, what's what? So I think that we had general purposes committee and planning and their own protocol, general purpose. I don't know how many committees we had loads. And you have a set period when you have to publish your papers within the time frame, and then you obviously have to do the meeting, and then afterwards you have the minutes. So it was a question of us never really being able to go away, because I had a committee meeting every Tuesday night practically. Anyway, as we got bigger and took on more responsibility, then we did take other clerks or other members of staff, if you like, who became clerks for a specific committee. I would always do town council and the personnel committee, of course. So, where am I now in my journey? What things that I'm really, really proud of in my family? Now, the main one, which is actually say that really hasn't got very much to do with me at all, was the neighbourhood development plan. And I think that was the absolute best thing that the town council ever did. And it frightened me to death, because when they actually deemed that they would do a neighbourhood development plan, I think, I don't think we have the acumen. I know that sounds awful, because we've got some really very, very good councillors, but we didn't have support staff. I didn't think I could do. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, where are we going to go with this one? Because it's a biggie, and where are we going? Anyway, fortunately, we had the good fortune of having some wonderful, wonderful and committed volunteers, chaired by the chairman was Mark Hazelby, who I don't know if any of you know him, but I take my hat off to that man. And we had John Scampion, Elizabeth Dixon, and there were loads of people to start with, but at the end, it was John and Elizabeth and Mark and sadly, David Stevenson, who's passed away now. And they stayed committed for 7.5 years to get this thing through. And I just think it was phenomenal, because now it has given us a little more teeth in terms of planning. It doesn't fit the neighbourhood development plan. That's a tangible reason why we are going to object to something or point it out to the district council. You can't do that because it's against the neighbourhood development plan. And as I say, I think that was one of the best things that the town council has done for a very long time, is to get that through. Where I think they then fell down, and I think we set precepts, obviously. So you're taxed. Now, if we're doing nothing, then we shouldn't tax you, because we're doing it. But actually, when we are doing it, then we should tax the public, because we have provided something tangible. And then with the town hall, we have spent an absolute fortune on that. We did on the neighbourhood development plan. It cost a tremendous amount of money. And those are the times when you can actually justify to the public, why have you put our precept up? Well, we put your precept up because we have spent £175,000 on this, or £160,000 on that for you. So I'm afraid it has to be paid for, rather than not put precept up, which is really from almost for as long as I have been. We started with a high precept, and then it dwindled, and for 10 years it's never put up. Okay, that's great, isn't it? We're not being taxed. If you don't have any money, you can't do anything. And you just, well, what's your point? If you can't do anything, there is no point. And I'm afraid the only way you can do anything is if you've got money. And of course we had tons of it, because we were affiliated to the town trust. So they had oodles of money. You know what, we didn't set a precept. Nobody was taxed. And then in 2002, when it split, the town council went away with nothing. Literally. It didn't have any money. It didn't have any property. It didn't have any. So that was a big thing that we had to overcome. So of course we then started setting a precept. And the one thing I do regret about that split, and I can understand what happened, but I was told, I think 2 days into my tenure, oh, you need to sign this agreement so that it's split from the town trust. Hang on a moment. I haven't read anything. I don't know what this is all about. Oh no, you just have to sign it. There's been a committee. It's all done and dusted. It's all done and dusted. You just have to sign it. Okay, right. 2 days into the job, practically, I'll sign it. Now, if I had known better, I would have signed it, because I had no choice. The town council had seen that this was what was going to happen, and there literally wasn't any choice. But where it was really right is if you think of number 1 Sheep Street, the little cottage next to the town hall. Or was the caretaker, the town hall caretaker's cottage. And if you leave the back door of the town hall, you can spit on the, it's that close, it's as close as you are to me. And yet we didn't walk away with it. Now, I think if I had been there and knew better, then I would have just said, fine, absolutely, everything's absolutely fine, but I'm signing nothing unless you give us that town hall, because it belongs to the town hall. It might be town trust money originally that bought the darn thing, but this is integral to the town hall, and that's all we went away with, the town hall and the cemetery. And unfortunately, I didn't, and it was sold. Put on a property ladder, and we didn't buy it. And so we're now in a very, well, not an enviable position at all, because I think as we grow and potentially as we get unitary authority, which may certainly affect the 3 tiers of local government, there is nowhere, literally nowhere within the town hall that we can go to. Every single nook and cranny has been utilised, every single one. So there is no scope of trying to increase our staff or anything like that, because there's nowhere we can go. As you know, we lost our planning application for the town hall. I'll say no more about that. But if we'd had that little cottage next door, well, obviously, because actually it's like a TARDIS when you go in it. It's incredible. And that would have really, really made a huge amount of difference to us. But we haven't got it, and we never will. And it has made our life very, very difficult, because they have stopped us actually using the back entrance, the back door of the town hall. We're not allowed to go out there unless there's a fire, which from a catering point of view has made it extremely difficult for the town hall, because we've only got one door. And I think if we'd still got that access and egress, it would have made hiring out the town hall very much more commercially viable for weddings. And we do hire it out, and we have a lot of weddings and things. But catering there now, it's incredibly difficult, because the caterers used to use the little backyard. But there you go. What else am I proud of? Well, let's talk about the birthday celebration, because that's probably I spent more time in my life looking at birthday celebration. I think that was a decision that the town council took too hastily. Now, whether it was right for them to take it on or not, that's a different matter. But I think if you're going to take on anything as big as that, then it does need more than 5 minutes debate in a chamber, and you're done. That's it, right? We're now going to do the birthday celebration. We've had to take on a huge storage unit, cost a fortune, just to house all the flagpoles. Cost a fortune. And to my mind, I'm a very, very simple person. We are strapped upon Avon Town Council. Where does Shakespeare come in? Oh, this Shakespeare's Institute, and all the Shakespeare birthday stuff. Oh, we are a scene. But the town council, I don't know. I still don't know why. And we've tried everything to sort of engage with these organisations. Now they certainly do participate in terms of the day, but they don't give us any money. So the only people that put any financial contribution towards the birthday celebrations is the town council and the district council. And thank God for the district council, because they didn't do it. And I think this is so incredibly sad, because people would, you take America, they'd kill to have Shakespeare's grave and Shakespeare's birthplace, and they would throw everything at a Shakespeare birthday celebration. And we have to scrimp and save, and fortunately, I think I was always quite good at that. I'm quite sort of creative, and I can think outside the box when it comes to things like civic events and that. So we've managed very, very cheaply to put on arguably something that is acceptable. What's so sad these days is that it's all the unsexy bits that cost money. The traffic management. You have to pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds for two guys to sit in a lorry all blinking there, doing nothing. But there they are. And you think, I should send my cemetery team to be lamp trained for 14 so that they can move a cone and put it in the roads. And this really makes me go back to when I was in sales and marketing in the hand tool industry. You just did it. You just jolly well did it. And these days, and I think this was one of the reasons why I needed to be, because I am an all or nothing person. I am not a bit woke. I'm not terribly politically correct either. And that's quite difficult now in local government, if you're not. I have never, ever referred to anybody as a chair. That's a chair. That is a chair. Are you a chair? No, of course you're not. You're a chair. Yes, I am a human. But no, you can't. And that's just not me, I'm afraid. I remember when I was in Sheffield, the city council at the time, they said that Barbie dolls had to be banned from all nursery schools because they were sexist. Barbie. And I just thought, even now, why don't they just pick this council up and chuck them out of the window? Because it was the start of the rot. And I think this is where it was time I needed to go, because it's a new generation. I just about managed to cope with Zoom. I was going to have a nervous breakdown when I realized that we were going to have to do Zoom. I think, oh my God, what Zoom? I can't. Oh, heck. Life was hell, and then you had to do Zoom. But that was the best thing. Suddenly, from having, we always had at the Town Council, but then you got 100% attendance because you're good. Because they had nothing better to do than go on Zoom, and people watched us. They actually watched the Town Council meeting from the comfort of their home with their glass of wine. So that was jolly good. And I remember saying to Peter, I don't mean, Zoom. But of course now I actually like Zoom. And I think the worst thing that this government, the worst thing this government's done is but we were not allowed to continue as a platform for our council meeting, which was so completely ridiculous. When you think about it, a councillor has got to come out, probably in the car, they've got to find a parking space, they've got to pay for parking, and our councillors don't get paid. They don't. And that's just so ridiculous when we could all be there. And of course, you can also mute. Really, really. Now, I'm sure that you've all heard of Jackie Weaver. I remember it was the big manager who sent me an email saying, "Oh, you've got to watch this, it's so funny." I watched this. Actually, I nearly ended up, seriously, in tears. I really did. Because it put our level of local government in, it was so horrendous that I hadn't, absolutely, I totally agreed with her, mute them, send them out. She was wrong, by the way, administratively, she was wrong. But you can understand why she did it, just to keep the whole thing going. But I have to say, with these listeners, that sort of behaviour does not happen at Canadian Town Council. It doesn't. And I don't think it ever will. But what it's done, I think, is damage our sector. People go, oh, yeah, parish council, oh, look at them. Whereas actually, I take my hat off to our town council. They work incredibly hard. I wouldn't be a councillor if you paid me. And they don't get paid. I just keep saying that, but they don't. And they've worked so hard most of the time. And I don't think you've got some. I mean, you know, you're always going to get some, aren't you? Oh, goodness sake. But there we go.